It's time to sharpen up those edges and grease up your chains.
We are going to live it up with mountain life. Dropping in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, mountain lifers, mountain lovers, and fingerless glovers? Mountain goats and friends with boats, summer sinners and jump right inners, skinny dippers and out for a rippers? All right, that's enough. How you doing? Are you okay? How's your tan? We're coming up on the end of summer, back to school. All those great plans left undone. It might be getting kind of hectic out there. Hopefully not, but thanks for tuning in. My name is Feet Banks, and what I actually want to know is, does anyone even wear fingerless gloves anymore? Like for biking or paddling or throwing up a barbed wire fence or whatever it is you need gloves for. Personally, I do. Fingerless gloves with mesh backs and padded palms. Got them from the dollar store. They're amazing. You know what else is amazing? Photography legend Blake Jorgenson is on the pod today. Most anyone who's paid attention to any ski or bike mags over the past almost 3 decades should know who Blake is. He has more than 300 covers to his credit, and there's a pretty good chance many of your favorite outdoor images were crafted by his mind, eye, lens, and work ethic. And we're going to get into that and more right after this quick message from our longtime podcast partners at Jack Wolfskin, makers of quality and sustainable outdoor clothing, gear, and footwear. Jack Wolfskin is here with your weekly weather report. Rain is in the forecast, but that shouldn't be a problem thanks to their weatherproof Texapor technology. Texapor is Jack Wolfskin's exclusive weather protection that's used in their jackets, shoes, packs, and more. Texapor is built to keep you comfortable and dry, so the rain will stop before you do. Jack Wolfskin, we live to discover. Okay, let's get right into it. Blake Jorgenson is a true master. In 2001, he won the prestigious World Ski and Snowboard Festival Pro Photographer Search and then the Showdown when he was just 25 years old and up against some of the heaviest hitters in the outdoor sports photography world. Then, 10 years later, he won it again with all new photos. He has a Photo of the Year award from Powder Magazine, as mentioned, over 300 covers. He knows all the best athletes, is father to a really funny and lovely young girl, and has recently been making big waves in the world of commercial photography. He's also been a contributor to Mountain Life since basically the very beginning, and I had the pleasure of writing a feature story on him in February of 2017. But before that, in the fall of 2016, when our buddy Chili Tom was about to perish from cancer, and he dragged us all down to Utah and Arizona to film his magnum opus, a ride off into the sunset cowboy movie in places like Monument Valley, Moab, and Arches National Park, Blake stepped in as a chief cinematographer, one of his earlier gigs shooting moving pictures. I wanted to film it classical style, he told me. Everything locked off on the tripod, the same way they did in all those old John Ford Westerns. And the thing was, I have a film degree, and I took 2 courses on the American Western, and I didn't realize that was how John Ford shot those flicks, or that was the style of the time. But it made sense, and Blake knew it, and Chili rode off into the sunset happy. And that's the kind of guy Blake is. He does the work, he pays attention to the details, and he gets the job done as well or better than anyone. But also, he's always thinking, and he values the art above almost anything else. So let's get into it. Here's Blake and I talking in his kitchen just outside of Pemberton, BC. 30 years now since you moved to Whistler. What keeps you excited about making pictures?
I think what keeps me excited about making pictures is just, it's always a new opportunity. It's always a new bag of tricks. It's just the newness. And it always changes as you change and you grow. And, I read this quote the other day that the greatest fear a real artist has is that the reality that you'll never be able to get all the ideas out of your head in your lifetime. I feel like as time goes by, I have more and more ideas. And as you gain more skills and more knowledge and more insight, both in photography and just your life in general, it just becomes more interesting.
Has it ever happened to you where you have an idea and then you don't move on it maybe as quickly as you should have, and then you see somebody else, that idea finds somebody else and it comes to life through somebody else, and you're like, oh, geez, I waited too long on that one?
Not really, because I kind of feel like a lot of the ideas or deeper concepts are very native to you. I don't think we're all unique people with our own unique visions. and our unique ways of doing things. And the further you go down that path, the more unique it even becomes. So your peers and the other people that are on that road and have been on that road for a long time, they become your most trusted companions, and I think that you're extremely excited to see what they produce, and they're excited to see what you produce, because it's all so different and so inspiring.
Talking about art, let's kick it way back. I mean, we've spoken before. It's been over 10 years since we last sit down and had a long chat in a professional situation. But you were a visual artist before you were a painter. Take me back to Ontario, to you growing up as a kid, and finding or trying to find a way to express your artistic ideas and drive.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just starts as a almost like a personality trait extension. I was extremely shy, lots of social anxiety, and art was just a great conduit to express myself.
You were living in a city, or?
Yeah, I was living in downtown Toronto, and felt pretty uncomfortable there. I was like, being in the downtown in a big city like that can be exciting, but also isolating too. I felt it kind of isolating. Maybe my personality wasn't developed enough to fully absorb it, I guess. But art, putting energy into art, and then also in my teenage years, I got into the outdoors. Got super into whitewater kayaking and having the opportunity to get to experience the outdoors. Started skiing a little bit. And that led me to a trip to Whistler. And I think Whistler was like the first place that I've been where I could just I visualize a future here. I feel like this kind of fits my comfort zone a little bit more.
Yeah. And
then it was only like a year or two later that I ended up in Whistler. So.
And you moved out there probably drawn in by the skiing. Did you try to do, the old kind of art, painting or visual art or whatever you were doing before when you got to Whistler, or did it just go backseat?
No, I think it was, a combination of a bunch of things. One, you're like, back then I was like living out of a backpack, couch surfing, and you're like, how much you have like a backpack and a pair of skis. Whereas like when I was in Toronto, I had like all these painting supplies and almost like a full studio, of all this stuff, and it's interesting because when I was in Toronto being an artist, I was like always creating in this cramped indoor space, like always inside. Every single piece of art that was made in a small indoor space. And then you come to Whistler and you're like, okay, well, I'm here for the outdoors. And so the doors swung the other way. Everything was about being in the outdoors. And I think photography was the easiest way to combine continuing that expression of self, but be in the outdoors.
Were your folks artistically inclined, or you got brothers and sisters?
I have like a half brother and half sister, but not really. Nobody in my family is really artistic. My dad likes to take lots of photos, but nobody's really, is per se an artist. But I don't think that really means much, because like, in my opinion, I think we're all artists. I think we're all, just because you don't create something that has some kind of title to it, doesn't really mean much, because the way you dress, the way you talk, the way you look, your job, your career, your family, like it's all a bigger picture of creative expression.
I feel like there's that famous saying, everyone's born an artist and then society beats it out of us.
Yeah. I think it's, that's why it's super important to always, for me, it's important to keep my psychology geared towards being an artist, and that it's okay to not do everything logically, that it's okay to do things purely because your gut tells you to, even though if it seems like a bad idea, that you can engage in non-linear thinking and engage in things that don't necessarily make sense to you or anybody else at the time, but there's this inner drive to just do it anyways. And I think that is, some people might look at that as a reckless way to live life, but it can also be a very fulfilling way to live your life too.
Was there a point where you found, okay, actually, I'm more comfortable with that perspective than I was when I was younger? Or has it always been a bit of a comfort, like, a comfort with uncomfort?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my journey of photography and art has allowed me to kind of come full circle. Like the things that I was avoiding or not good of, like, that not being able to communicate with people, social anxiety, not like, in order for me to become successful at art and this craft, I had to, stare myself in the mirror and figure all that out. So all the things, the personality traits that got me into it in the first place were also the things that I actually had to overcome to actually achieve some kind of success at it. So it's kind of like a full circle kind of thing, in terms of learning about yourself and managing yourself and managing all your things that are holding you back, I guess,
I think about the culture of Whistler, the mountain culture of the 90s there. And I was thinking today on the drive out here, I'm like, that might have peaked. And like, let's just say at the end of the summer of 1999 might have been the greatest time ever at least for Whistler. We were coming off the best winter anyone could remember. Everyone had a phone that could text each other, but nobody was really taking a picture. There was no social media. Like secret spots were still secret spots. There was no Google Maps or any of that. Like we could communicate basically, but everyone was still mostly free to be outside and to let, you would run into people. You would meet, like, stuff that I've kind of missed nowadays. I would almost never these days go to somebody's house and just show up, right? Whereas in those days, you would just do that all the time. And I wonder, like, do you think that was right when you were kind of on the rise and getting a lot of great time, no kids or anything, so you had time to just be outside all the time with your friends? You were starting to build a reputation, get beautiful photos published. Do you lament those old days ever, or are you comfortable with the way things are now? I mean, obviously you're still doing what you love, but it's a totally different world.
Totally. I mean, I kind of describe those days as the days, the last days prior to, digital influence and connectivity beyond the people within our touch.
Yeah.
Like when I was in high school, it was like you had to go to the local 7-Eleven or the local arcade to like find out what was happening. We had these hubs of organic connectivity. You know what I mean? Like maybe you had a landline to contact someone.
You would have to phone someone and talk to their mom or
but
their
like
dad.
A lot of our culture in Whistler was like going into town, going to an event, because you knew that that's where everybody was going to be. And it was kind of an extension of, I think, the way people have been living for a really long time. And that was like not only the end of that era in Whistler, but like almost the rest of the world. Yeah. Because all of a sudden, as soon as you could communicate and coordinate around that dynamic, like everything changed. Like I used to put up posters to do like a slideshow in the 90s. All I have to do is put up a couple posters around town. The whole town would show up. Place would be packed.
Yeah.
Now the amount of effort that you got to do to get people to show up at an event is insane because the competition for communication. You
can reach more people than ever, but nobody's really paying attention.
Exactly. We're just we're not, we're almost more disconnected on that cultural level.
Yeah.
Because everyone is just spastically all over the place and people are competing for that spastic attention, but like, yeah, I remember, even when I worked at the ski shop before I started taking pictures full time, that ski shop was almost like the 7-Eleven at the high school. Like what was so cool about it and what I think was magical about it and getting my career started is that was the hub. Like people would go there every day just to find out what someone did, what someone skied, what's happening tomorrow, to network and maybe find a ski partner for tomorrow or something like that. It was much more than just drop off your skis.
Yeah.
There's like a human connectivity there that that place and a lot of other places in Whistler had, and that's what made it super special. Like I remember throwing house parties in Emerald and like 200 people would show up. It'd be crazy. And I don't think you'd ever have that happen now.
Do people even have house parties? I wonder. I mean, I'm not in Whistler anymore, but hopefully they do.
I hope so.
It seems expensive at the club, so.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, who knows? But I just remember, being, and all the crazy characters that used to come by, and I just found it so inspiring. That was such, Bruce Rolls working there, the first guy that was like, inspired me to, get out there and take photos, and that there was a lifestyle, that Whistler contained that was worth documenting. And it was like, I kind of like saw his example, and I was like, okay, that gives me more than just creative expression, more than just creating photos, but like purpose of the photos. Like, I can document the purpose of my life and make myself feel content and share it with someone else, maybe inspire someone else, maybe in some bigger picture convince me or my parents that moving here wasn't a really stupid idea. Sort of like deeper justifications of like why I'm getting out of bed in the morning,
And also shine a light on your buddies. I think there's a famous story where somebody came home to the house and like with a bike magazine, and all 6 people in your house had a shot in the magazine. Yeah.
So there is an immense amount of community and connectivity with the people that you shot. And that was something that really uplifted my social anxiety, that really created a lot of connectivity for me, because people wanted to create with me. People, I was like, okay, that was my early excitement of why I like to take pictures. It was like the energy of creating friendships, creating these amazing images, and then showing them in magazines, because I was also like pre-social media, pre-digital as well. So like shooting on film and getting those images published in a magazine was such a huge deal. Like now getting we take for granted digital publishing because you can self-publish everything. It's so easy. But like then the process of like getting a roll of film, putting in your camera, going out there, shooting it, getting it to the lab, getting it back from the lab, looking at slides, mailing it to somewhere, and getting it printed was like, that was such an insane process, looking back on it.
Yeah.
And so when you saw that like double page spread at the magazine, and also back then magazines were everything. They were the most powerful, kind of form of media for
movies would come out once a year, and magazines would come out, 4 times a season or 5.
Yeah, I mean, you like the magazine rack at the IGA was like massive. It was huge, and it would be like you'd run into other people checking out the photos there. It becomes its own little mini 7-Eleven hub of, and I would be there, thumbing through magazines, being inspired, checking out my photos, checking out other people's photos. That's something that I gravely miss, I think. The whole process and effect. But yeah, that's a true story. I remember one time, like one of our roommates, living in an A-frame with a bunch of dudes with, perpetual cloud of bong smoke reeking out the windows. It was like about as classic of a Whistler living in your 20s as you could have. And one of our roommates came home with a bike photo annual, and like almost everybody in the house had a shot in it, and just like, it was like we won the Super Bowl. Like the energy was just insane of like that we not only created something cool, but we had our mark on the world, that everybody in the entire bike culture that cares anything about biking is seeing this. It was like incredibly powerful at the time.
You came west as a skier, but mountain biking was really starting to balloon right around then. How long did it take you to get into biking and get into that world? Because you quickly were, publishing photos in bike magazines not that long after you arrived.
Yeah, I mean, I think that biking actually kind of took off pretty fast because it was kind of starting in Whistler. It was the start of this new wave that was very much parallel to skiing and snowboarding and the mechanics of that culture. So people were just kind of creating, like, free ride mountain biking was kind of, an extension of all that, I think. And it was a lot more accessible, like, being in your 20s and having like no money. it was easy to go take bike photos because it didn't cost any money. If you made mistakes, you could go out the next day or the next day after that. You know, it's something that why I think biking has an attraction, because it's very accessible. It's very easy. You can literally just go out with you and your buddies and no restrictions.
It's not fresh powder dependent.
No, and like, you know, I quickly kind of realized that to kind of really play in the professional game of skiing, you needed to spend some money.
Yeah.
And even though I think my photos were good, I just had not progressed to that level where I was able to throw the money down, you know? So like biking actually kind of bubbled a little bit ahead. But the skiing caught up. I think that I did figure things out. More people started to believe in me, more funding came, more relationship building, and the skiing and biking became a hand-in-hand year-round machine, you know? And then I think that I did that for a bunch of years, and at a certain point, it just seemed like the skiing and snowboarding just took over, and biking just kind of got squeezed out. You know, but I was fully invested in action sports for a really long time.
Yeah, and you know, it's almost year round. If you think about it, you can do some kind of action sport. Some months you can do both. Did you ever suffer from burnout, or like you just I've been working for 3 years now without a real break, or without doing a creative project for myself? Or
I think that honestly for like the first 10 or 15 years, I never really cared about making money. All I cared about was traveling and going on these cool trips with these cool people and doing these cool experiences. And a lot of them were just insane. A lot of them were just nuts, amazing good times, pretty loose. You know, it suited my personality at the time. It was a lot of fun. And all I wanted to go was on the next trip, the next bit of excitement. And didn't really think too much if it was a wise business decision. You know, I basically blew every cent that I got access to because, you know, one thing would work out, one thing wouldn't work out. I didn't really have the experience or the desire to like I didn't want to be told no. I didn't want to be told that this trip was a bad idea or that experience was going to be, I would just go anyways. You know, I think I was pretty stubborn that way and learned the hard way, but also like, man, I had a lot of good times with a lot of great people. So, but then at a certain point I was like, okay, I think I actually need to figure out a way to make some money here. Cause I think the way I'm doing this is not working out. Cause I was like, there was 1 year probably in like my early to mid 30s where I'm like, okay, I'm like probably the most published guy out there and I'm flat broke, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Not doing something right here. So, you know, through the advice of some other people, some great mentors, kind of humbling myself, starting to ask more questions, starting to just admit that maybe I don't really know, taking a lot of really great photos that people really appreciate and that are inspired, but I don't really know what I'm doing, like business wise, you know? And that just became a whole nother evolution of my career, you know? And I just kind of realized that, you know, art and business are like a marriage, and you have to treat it that way. And that, you know, your longevity of success playing the long game is definitely the relationship between the two of those things.
And I wonder about, you know, you mentioned good times and things being a bit loose. And I know the first time that I lost a buddy, you know, while we were on a shoot or whatever, I definitely was like, I don't know even if this is worth it. Like, we're having a good time, but I would rather maybe have that person around. It's inevitable, you know, in this culture that we're going to lose people. But I wonder, like, how did that affect you? How old were you? Were probably still quite young, right? The first time you lost a friend in the mountains. What kind of role did that play?
Yeah, I mean, the first sort of like real hero that kind of passed away was Trevor Peterson. You know, I was super young. I was working in the ski shop.
Yeah.
He was there all the time. They were like, him and Trevor and Eric were like the heroes that would come in, but they were part of that culture that would be coming in. And I remember talking to him and, you know, being wowed by him and taking his skis from him
Yeah,
and that kind of, and Rosie was taking photos of him and
I remember being so stoked to make that guy a sandwich one day and being like, oh, dude, he's going taking these people out and I got to make their sandwiches.
yeah.
Right?
So that, and then I was like, so that was like a first, like, understanding that this fantasy life, this fantasy world definitely had some reality checks for it. I guess.
And that would have been almost before you really were even probably shooting much.
Yeah, I was probably like in my early 20s there, like probably like 19 or 20 actually.
Yeah.
And the next time that something like that happened was when Beaker died, who was working in the shop with me.
Right.
And I think that was kind of like, that was the first big reality check. That's like someone that I was literally working with the day before, that you could touch and talk to.
Yeah.
Is just all of a sudden gone, and so that was a big learning experience there. And then it was just one after another, like one day I feel like I added up all the people that I photographed that have died in accidents in the mountains. And it was like almost like 40 people. It was a lot of people that I had worked with and come across. And
was there ever a voice in the head being like, you should call it in? Like, there's got to be something else where you don't have to have these tragic things happening so often.
Yeah. It wasn't honestly until Dave Treadway died that I definitely started to second guess my psychology, and also a lot of other people's psychology in the Sea to Sky, because it's very collective. I think that I very much believe that it's okay to die in the mountains if you're doing what you love.
Yeah.
And I believed that for a very long time. And then when Dave died and, we were pregnant with my daughter, and I was just, I just started, I didn't really have the answer, but I just started to become confused about it.
Yeah.
That maybe that type of thinking was incorrect and maybe somewhat selfish.
Dave already had a family, and you had one on the way.
Yeah, and I just, I kind of thought about it. I was like, I'm pretty sure that Dave would give up every day in the mountains that he ever had to have Christmas with his kids. You know what I mean? So like that psychology of like sacrificing everything to be in the mountains for a thrill experience just didn't make sense to me anymore. And I started to, at that point, veer away from the world of excitement and helicopters and being in the mountains and that whole scene that I was very invested in, and just kind of sort of sliding into commercial work a lot more. I'd already been dabbling in commercial work for 4 or 5 years at that time.
Yeah.
Kind of doing half and half and learning about it. And I think that experience maybe just sort of think maybe it's time to switch gears a little bit here.
And were you able to find a similar feeling of accomplishment in the commercial world as you were getting in the mountains?
Yeah, it's totally different. I feel like in the commercial world, it's infinite. It's an infinite ocean of learning. There's no ceiling. The thing with like action sports is like it's super exciting, and very adventurous. Amazing experiences. But it's the same thing every year. It's like a broken record. It doesn't change, and that industry isn't required to change. So you either have to accept it for what it is, or you have to do something else. And I think that a lot of people come to that conundrum because you always want to grow, you always want to learn, and you can outgrow something that isn't growing itself. So that you get to that crossroads of like, okay, I either got to accept it for what it is and do this forever, or, do something else. And it was hard because I think I battled a lot of my insecurity and anxiety with the comfort of what I created. So it was like the scariest thing that I ever did was to like kind of walk away with it and start new and in something that I didn't know totally that much about at the time. It was super scary, but it's been amazing in terms of like growing as an artist and growing as a business person and just growing as a person, because it just does have infinite growth. And that part I've really enjoyed. But there's definitely I'm not afraid to admit that I miss the action, I miss the excitement, I miss the adventure. And anytime I can squeeze on one of those trips, I'm all for it.
It feels like, just from an outsider's perspective, though, you really picked up the more personal photography projects, just because you had an idea, and over the course of 6 months or whatever, you work on it, and then time would come and you'll go do a roller skate girls photo shoot, or you'll go do a car-based thing with the Cooney sisters, or you'll go do something with Austin and a moody Western theme, kind of, where it's not for anyone but yourself and your friends. And is it just that the commercial world gives you a bit more time and you have maybe a bit more financial freedom to do these passion projects, or did that also come from the stepping a bit away from the action?
Well, I think that when you're, or like when I was working in action sports in that world, like, you're a big part of it. And, outdoor photography in general, I think is you're kind of romanticizing this idea that you're fusing lifestyle and work, and you're convincing yourself that you're not working because you're living your best life in the outdoors with your friends. And at a certain point, once you're, I think you develop your craft to a certain point, it actually became easier for me to separate the two. I'm like, okay, I'm working as a technician for this client, for this company. We're going to create this. It's their idea. They're hiring me. Like, that ad agency has done a ton of work of creating and selling this idea to this client, and they've chosen me as the person to help build and execute that. So I just have to approach it that way. You know what I mean? But it's very clear that, like, it's still their creation. Like, I'm putting my creative touch on it and helping them create it. But it's easier now to, like, okay, now I can do these things that are disconnected from that are personal projects. I can work with other artists, other creative people, with no purpose other than just creating art, and then there isn't the frustration of trying to combine the two. Because I think that was a part of it. It started to become frustrating that you're not quite getting to express yourself the way you want or do what you want. So I just realized that the only way to really deal with that is to just do that. Just go do exactly what you want on your own time, the way you want it. And then you won't have that burning desire to overlap in your professional work. Keeping it separate all of a sudden made sense to me. And it's been super enjoyable. Like, it made me realize that there's an entire creative world and creative group of people that is outside of the overshadowed world of shred world in the sea to sky. And a lot of people have a lot of creative energy and creative ideas that are just sitting there waiting for someone like me to call them and say, let's do something cool.
Yeah. And I guess, we all talk about the personalities of the mountain culture, and, the guys like Rabbit and Seppo and Rolsey and all these great characters that you meet in that world. There's a whole bunch of personalities that don't care for skiing or snowboarding. But in the commercial world, do you meet characters like that as well? Or is it a different scene? Is everyone a bit more business?
I would say everybody's a bit more business. People are still creative, but growing up in this Whistler world where it has its own pace and its own energy, and I think for the most part, everybody at every age group, this probably goes with every ski resort on the planet, but everyone is like, kind of rolls off this premise that work as little as you can, play and ski and ride your bike as much as you can. And if you can combine work and fun and skiing in the outdoors, then you're winning, But going into this other world, I feel like people were like, they never spent time as a ski bum, they charged into their careers and they mean business. And I found it very challenging to learn how to go from Whistler pace to that pace. That was a big adjustment for me, and to learn how to keep up You know,
Yeah.
I never went to university. I dropped out of high school. I didn't really have a lot of the skills to run my business, communication skills, and just to be at that level of expectation. You know, I think that was a big growing pain for me. But it all kind of fit in that bucket of growth. And even though it was like pretty serious growing pains for a bunch of years of like learning how to step my game up to operate at that level, now I find it quite rewarding because I did put in the work. You know.
Is there a trick that you've learned over the years of how to, you know, sort of fast track a learning experience, or how to, you know, operate and succeed in a situation where you're maybe a little underqualified or uncomfortable? Is there something you can pass on to, you know, the next kids that are going to make that leap?
Yeah, I think the best thing is to do your research. You know, do your research on what your project is. Do your research on where you're going to shoot it. I feel like the more research that I do, and the more preparation that I do, the more I can visualize how this is going to go down, and the more my anxiety goes down, and the less stress of like, do I know what I'm doing? Can I pull this off? Am I full of shit? It's a major psychological game of how to overcome your own self-doubt. But anything that's going to be exciting, anything that's going to be worthwhile doing, you know, just like David Bowie says, your toes should just be dangling at the you know, the bottom of the ocean there with slight uncomfortability. You know, like you want to be feathering. You don't want to go too far where you're going to drown, but you don't want to be stuck flat-footed in the shallow end forever, because you'll just be unfulfilled. You know, like you kind of have to learn that psychological game of where you can, you know, succeed and fail. The edge. I think that's what, to me, that's going back to your first question. Like that's what thrives as a creative person, is like knowing where your edge is. You know,
and how to ride the line as long as you can.
How to ride the line. How to deal with failure. Failure is like, you know, learning how to deal with failure is probably the most important thing I think anybody needs to actually know.
Do you feel like there was a certain time where you sort of figured that out? Like, did you struggle with that when you were younger, and then, you know, by the time you were in your 30s, you felt better about it? Or is it a constant ongoing thing to?
No, I think I've been pretty lucky. I've never been afraid to crash the ship into the mountain, you know, and feel like I've done it so many times that I'm pretty desensitized to it now. And, you know, you still have to calculate risk, because as your career grows, there's more chips on the table.
Yeah.
And obviously if you're playing at the high stakes table, you still got to take risks. You're not going to win, but you can't be reckless or you're going to be out. You know? So I think that a lot of it is just like you're using all of your experience, both emotionally and technically, to just play at that table, you know.
I was speaking with Sandy Ward earlier today, and I know you've done some stuff with some of her projects, but about film. And we were talking about, you know, the Red Bull Dirt Diaries and the 72-hour filmmaker showdown. And I always felt like those contests where you had a short time frame, pretty loose, those were like a crash course in learning how to fail, recover, fail again, and you could get a lot done in a very short time for your own growth of your skills, because it was so high paced and frantic, and the expectations were not, you know, you had your own, but that was it.
Yeah, because a lot of the value in that world is learning how to perform under pressure, both within yourself, the people that you're doing something with, and the people that you're doing it for. It's really, you know, and I went through this experience too. It's like, it's really easy to go out in the outdoors to nice sunsets to the top of the mountain and create this portfolio of happy accidents that you'll probably never be able to recreate again on your own time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if someone gives you a time frame and says you have to do it now under these really ridiculous parameters, well, that's a whole different ball of wax. So like those shows, I think, are really amazing for, you know, anybody to get involved, to start learning about that dynamic, because, you know, especially a lot of commercial work, it's like you're expected to deliver in really difficult parameters, and it's not the most ideal thing, but you're going to use everything that you have ever accumulated to make it happen, you know.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's really what comes, and that's where like the planning, the research, how am I going to overcome these obstacles? Like that becomes its own art form separate than your creative concept, you know? And I think that going through the motions of those types of things is super important. And they're just, you know, a lot of people, when you're first starting out, you just need a venue to show your stuff. You know what I mean? For me, it was like the Pro Photographer Showdown when I was super young. That was like, okay, I want to show my stuff there.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, it created an outlet, a purpose for me. I'm going to create photos to show it on that. You know what I mean? And now I think in this day and age, it's one value of digital, even though we're like talking about how it's like super diluted, is like there's so many different platforms for artists, musicians to show their stuff now. Like you're not there's so much more opportunity to get your stuff out there.
Yeah, you don't have to start your own film festival just to show your films in your town.
Exactly. You know,
I think about that. You know, people think of us photographers as a sort of lone wolf, and I come from the film world, which is so collaborative, right? And a lot of the, you know, there's a producer which does a lot of the things you were just talking about, and a director. And how was your learning curve with collaboration? Was that, you know, was that easy as you up the stakes and everything? You have to bring people on.
Totally. That was definitely a long learning curve. And, you know, starting out, I think photography is something that suited my personality because of being individualistic and being that lone wolf, as opposed to my personality wasn't in a team mentality when I was young. I was too uncomfortable for it, you know? But as the years go by and you learn and you learn and you learn and everything progresses, at a certain point, the demands of what you want to create are beyond the sum of yourself, and you have to start working in a team. And so you get forced to just deal with it and learn it. And it was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, because I just started to realize that like you have all these people with these insane talents. They whatever it is job that they do, they can do it 10 times better than I can do it. So when everybody gets together and you have sort of a collective vision of what you're creating and what you're doing, and everyone can sort of clearly do their part, what you create is so beyond yourself, so outstanding, you know. And
that can be anything from hair and makeup to costume to set design to lighting.
All the above. Yeah. Everyone. But you have to be able to develop and manage a concept. You know, you have to be able to communicate, you know. So it's like, one thing about the action sports world is it's, you know, it's kind of like photojournalism. It's kind of like a stylized form of photojournalism that gets used as advertising. But like every single day that I went out and shot action sports, I had no idea what we were going to do until we did it. You know, it was more like we're just charge, you know, like
that looks good over there. There's a good light, you
know. So it was a type of photography that I didn't realize at the time. That is, you know, and there's value in sort of on-siting and the skill of photographing things as you see it in the moment. You know, there's nothing to discredit that. But I started to become hungry to create things that were more pre-designed, you know, that were like ideas or concepts that were pre-visualized and that I could put down on a piece of paper and I could show it to someone and convince them that they could participate in too, and what they could, and it becomes like a conversation of a concept or idea prior to being shot. And now almost everything I do almost fits into that umbrella, whether it's personal work or hired work. It's like this big construction process.
Yeah.
And, you know, like when I was in action sports world, you'd be out shooting all the time because it was all just trial and error. You had very little control over how things were going to pan out. So all you could do is just get up and go out the next day, you know, and we all had an amazing time, an amazing work ethic to do that. Whereas now it's like the amount of planning, pre-production, post-production, communication, talking, conversations, what we're going to do is like 90% of everything. Like I probably maybe shoot a couple days a month now, but I'm still spending an immense amount of time in that world.
Yeah. And it sounds very much like the world of film, and even if you're only shooting stills, it's still like a production, like a film. But do you shoot much video or?
I don't really shoot any video, but I've gotten more into directing video.
Right.
Because I feel like high-end stills and video kind of meld together at a certain point, that you like that lone wolf thing just kind of goes out the window, and it's very much a team environment, and the mechanics are the same. And I think at a certain point, whether you're doing video or stills,
it's the same process.
It's pretty similar, yeah.
Because I mean, the last feature we ran about you in the mag, you had just put out your first short film, Braylorn dirt biking, and you just come off the Chili Tom cowboy movie, and you shot those two very differently, right? You shot the western, like a John Ford western, a lot of locked off shots, and the dirt bike movie was, even though it had a similar sort of Iron Horse vibe, much more dynamic.
Yeah.
But it seems like you've leaned more back into stills for your personal stuff, and you're not making too many short films.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the magic about stills is that, with a very small team and a very modest budget, you can still create world-class stuff.
Right.
Whereas like video is very, very much married to budget and manpower. There's only, you need a budget, and you need people, you need your army to make it happen. So there's a certain romance with stills of how you can create at a world-class level with still kind of a small amount. And I like that quite a bit, I think that's always the filmmaker struggle, is like, where the hell are we going to get the money to make this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas like with stills, you can actually go out and create something that is of the highest caliber. Whereas like, you're not going to go create Dune with a couple of your buddies.
But
and,
you might be able to get 1/600th of a second of Dune.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, and that's, it's a way of, I think also like, the magic of stills is putting everything you got into like, what is the moment, as opposed to an assembly of moments. To me, the difference between, photo and video is just how your brain absorbs information,
You've definitely moved into a bit more of a mentor role, and I know you mentioned Bruce Rolls, who's a long-time friend of the mag, and I know Paul Morrison. There's all these legends when you were younger, and now like you're one of those legends who the younger photographers are, excited to come help you on a shoot and learn from you and work with you. Was that an easy transition to go from your old life into the mentor role?
Yeah, I mean, I've always just believed in helping people out, and I think it helps with my anxiety to know that they have my support if I support them. Like the more I help people out, the more I think that people have my back, and that just makes me feel good about everything. I don't think that, when I was starting, I think that all of my mentors were reluctantly helpful. Maybe that the industry hadn't been around long enough to, maybe people weren't comfortable sharing a lot of stuff, because I don't think anybody really felt super confident that they even know what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They just did it the way
Or
that they did it.
secure that they were going to make rent.
Yeah. I think that things were in such there wasn't really as nowhere near as much of a precedent or industry or system as like there is now, so to speak. But I just think that in general, like a lot of people have just evolved to just being a lot more healthy when it comes to helping and sharing, and realizing that like your peers are the people that understand what you do, the people that do what you do at a high level. They're really the only people that truly understands what you do on this entire planet, and it's really worth the weight in gold to treat it that way and be in good communication with them and help them out, and they'll help you. I've just always been like that, and the other thing too is like I always thought I was like the young guy, and it's like I literally blinked and now I'm the old guy. It's like it happens that fast,
Yeah. Old guy with a kid. How has having a daughter changed, the way you do your art, the way you do your job?
It's funny. I think one of the main things it's helped me out with is time management. Like you just lose like 40% of your time when you have kids. So you're like, the only way to get it back is to become more efficient. It's the only way. And then once you start becoming more efficient, you just start to look back at your former self and just be like, oh my God, I used to think I was so busy, but I was really just bad at managing time.
Yeah.
You start to look things in that light. And I think it empowers you to just become more efficient, and that anything is possible when you force yourself to pick up the pace a little bit. And it's like, all my friends now that don't have careers and don't have kids that say they're busy, I just laugh at them. Like,
you have no idea. You have no idea.
Yeah. So, it's like everything is like twice as hard on every level, but it's also more rewarding now. So I think that's another thing, is like another bit of advice is like, your work ethic that you create is hands down the number one most important tool that you need, not talent, not anything else. Talent is like, talent's an illusion. Talent is a word that someone else uses as a description for you because they can't understand how you got from A to B. No one ever calls themselves talented. That's a third party description of exactly what that is. That person's so talented because I have no idea how much hard work they've put in to become who they are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's almost a description of ignorance in my opinion. But how hard you worked. So your discipline, your work ethic, how much you put into it, that is what actually helps you get from A to B.
And for sure you'll get lucky if you're working to be out there all the time. Then you'll get lucky sometimes. Like because being like really it goes back to the time management thing. If you're out there 7 days a week, well you're going to create luck and opportunity because you're out there all the time. Yeah.
If you're only out there 1 or 2 days a week or one a day every other week, well, mathematically time is not on your side.
Yeah.
So like I just think that just goes into the successful mindset psychology of like, if you're going to do something, you gotta really, put, the right work ethic and right energy, but it has to be balanced too, because it is easy to burn out and convince yourself that this isn't for you and quit. You only want to quit when you realize that the tsunami's coming and there's no way to avoid it, but when it just comes to crashing waves, you got to just keep on swimming sort of deal.
I think about that, we talk in the mountain world about how, it's been great. The ski movie started showing where the skier will pull off a line because it doesn't feel right or it doesn't look like, it's okay. You don't always have to meet the goal. And I mean, that's part of every life. You don't always have to meet the goal. Really, I think you were saying earlier, like the most successful people failed more than they succeeded. It's just that they didn't give up. Yeah. And they knew when to pivot and do something else.
Yeah. And, in the creative world, it's harder because, like I said before, you're managing a lot of ideas and concepts that might not necessarily make any sense. You literally might have other people look you in the face and say, this is a really bad idea. But if you want to create something great, that's when you have to override those feelings. So you're managing a lot of weight emotionally to go from A to B in a lot of those situations. And I highly recommend reading Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act. I feel like that does a really great job of compartmentalizing a lot of creative thoughts and artist processes in a way that makes sense, because I think that we all feel it, but we can't really make sense of it a lot of times. And he does a really great job of laying it out and be like, oh yeah, that's why I make those crazy decisions. That's why it works out sometimes. That's why it doesn't work out other times. And that's why I still enjoy doing it. That's okay to kind of be in that state of chaos, highly recommend that book.
Yeah. And Rick talks a lot about his process of going for a walk and watching the sun come up. And it's a very relaxed process for very few people probably enjoy that level of success and the time that it gives them to be able to have a perfect process. What's your, if you're working, on a shoot or something, like one of your passion projects, what's the process like? Are you run and gun and then you take some time to digest and then pick it back up? Or how do you sort of bring something from concept to completion?
I think that I'm spending at least a year developing ideas, which is so different than like running out the door and not even knowing what you're going to shoot that day.
Yeah.
So much of what I did previously was inspiration in the moment, where now it's like I'm kind of like building ideas. And just like how it says in Rick's book, like when you do or do not is solely based on what it feels right. And so much of what his book says and what I've come to learn is that sometimes for a lot of you just got to throw logic out the window and realize that we are emotional creatures and we make decisions from the gut, and that's okay. Because if you try to make logical sense of everything that you do creatively, I think you'll just drive yourself nuts,
So with an idea, you'll have an idea, you'll do a bit of work, and then just you're not feeling it, so you'll let it lay for a while, and then when it pops up, you go back to it, or? I
think it's just the manifestation of layers upon ideas and ideas. Like there's so many things going on that in the development of ideas in terms of the elements, the looks, how you're going to make it happen, who you're going to make it happen with. And you're just juggling all this stuff in your mind like a puzzle until all of a sudden, maybe one day, one element comes in that are like, oh, I can actually visualize how we can make this work now. Literally like a lot of those projects, I'll spend a year at least juggling these things in my head, adding on to them, and trying to figure out like how this is actually going to go down, and then you get to a point where like some extra element comes in. We're like, oh, I can see how this is going to work now. I can make some calls and I can start getting the ball rolling and say to other people, this is how it's going to happen, or this is how I hope it's going to happen, and I think that going from developing an idea in your head to paper to shooting it to seeing it is so incredibly rewarding. It's so different than that photojournalism way of life that I lived for so long,
Do you miss, we talked about, you used to say, hey, I want to be in the Photographer Showdown, or, for us, it was, we're going to make our B-grade horror movies for Horror Fest. You do these beautiful shoots, you have these ideas, and then it comes out on a computer. Like, is there a drive in you to change the delivery process sort of back to something larger and more personal and in person, rather than, you just put out beautiful images onto the internet? Like you used to have an art gallery where the stuff was on the wall. Like, do you ever feel like this idea needs to be more, or this needs to be on a wall, or this needs to be on a big screen in front of an audience? Or
yeah, I actually think that a lot more traditional processes are making a bit of a comeback. Like a lot more people are shooting film for a variety of reasons. A lot more people are making prints. A lot more people, magazines, Mountain Life, like. I think that the major magazine business module of big conglomerate newsstand magazines that, these companies that own like 200 publications of every single demographic imaginable, that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
But what's making a real comeback is the independent magazines like Mountain Life that cater to a very specified audience.
Yeah.
Because I think that was the thing. It's like, when I was, heavily invested in magazines like Powder, it's like the publishing company would want to sell it to 1 million people. But when you did the math, there's only actually 100,000 people of really dedicated people that want to absorb this content anyways. So you're kind of working in a wrong direction there. So
and
it's like,
you'd be way more excited to be in Powder than Sports Illustrated.
Well, it's like, even when social media started, I was like, would you rather be a photo on the internet that gets seen by 1 million people that don't care? Would you rather be on the cover of Powder Magazine with 100,000 people that are the most important people in the industry?
And then 1,000 kids that tear it off and pin it to the bathroom wall. In
Yeah,
their shitty
so
little ski house.
that's what I feel like the internet, because all these metrics came with it, and I think it fooled everybody. It was just like like this bad joke of like you're having a greater reach, but not as much effectiveness, and it doesn't matter if you're reaching 1 million people if they don't care, or if they're even annoyed by you trying to reach them. So,
I mean, Todd and Christina just had basically a slideshow, right? A multimedia slideshow, slides and video, and they had it at Millennium Place, and a bunch of people came. And I think like we might start seeing more of that. Like, I remember in the old days, you go on a trip and you'd come home from a trip and you'd have a slideshow and show your buddies.
Yeah. I mean, like, when we shot film, like the only way to look at them was to like have your buddies come over once you got the film developed, and you'd sit there in the living room on the broken couch that's been there for 20 years and look at through a slide projector.
Yeah.
Fully analog, and just the magic of seeing it on the screen. And there's no external validation. No one else gets to see it other than those people in the room. So I think we hadn't really gone down the road of being tempted of the addictions of validation, which is another thing that's really important to learn as an artist. I think Rick talks about that a lot in his book. You really, really have to reach a point where you can't give a shit what other people think about what you're doing, or it'll just completely bastardize what it is that you're doing. It's very hard to do. It's okay to take criticism. It's okay to absorb what other people say, but you need to keep your ship sailing in the direction that you want to go.
Especially, it's probably easier to absorb after you've already done the work and put the piece out than who cares what people say.
Yeah.
But don't let them shut it down before you've even done it.
Yeah, or don't be afraid to not do it in the first place because you're afraid that people will think it's not good. Who cares what they think?
Has that ever happened to you where you did something that pissed off your mom, or you did something that,
oh yeah, you're going to piss off everybody. To me, the definition of good art means that the majority of people are going to hate it, and a small percentage of people are going to love it. And the big reason why the small percentage of people are going to love it is because they understand it and they know that the majority hates it. If everybody likes it, it's mediocre. You know what I mean? At best. So it's important to piss people off. It's important to fail. It's important to be immersed in all the negative things that go hand in hand with the positive.
I feel like a lot of artists have a real sensitive soul when they're young, especially, and that's probably the main hurdle, right? Is to get over that, like, I'm not supposed to be here and everyone's going to hate it and and just do it anyhow.
Absolutely. After doing this for almost 3 decades, I've realized that the real art form is defeating your own psychology of yourself. And the purpose of the art form is to learn about your own psychology. And it's this very fantastical process of learning how to defeat it. And that's the number one thing that I've learned after doing it for almost 30 years.
Well, let's do some rapid fire. What's the worst job you've ever had?
None of them. They're all worthy in some way.
What's the first job you ever had?
The jobs that suck are the ones that you learn the most from.
Right.
And the gravy jobs, you learn absolutely nothing. You don't learn anything from winning. You only learn from losing. And my favorite quote that I always loved is, Babe Ruth struck out way more times than he hit home runs, but no one gives a shit about how many times he struck out.
Yeah. What are you most stoked on these days?
I'm always the most stoked on learning. I think that, creatively, what I'm the most stoked on is learning about the development of photography and separating it from AI and computer generated stuff, and figuring out both emotionally and technically how to push photography in a way that is like, that is a photograph that is the real deal. It's human. It relates to me. And so I'm thinking a lot creatively Because I think that even like 2 years ago, I had a lot of ideas and concepts that I wouldn't even consider now because AI is coming in the picture,
Right.
Just in terms of like how to go about it, how it's going to look, how someone's going to receive it. It's all gone out the window. Now I'm like rethinking how to do something so that it seems real.
And are those conversations you have with other industry people, other photographers? Is there a sort of secret backdoor consortium of people like bumping their heads on this?
It's not like the Illuminati or something like that. I think it's pretty open. Everyone's got their opinions. But art is at its truest form a human expression. It's not a robotic expression. It doesn't make sense to have a robot create art.
Yeah.
A robot should be mowing your lawn or something like that. I think that there's always going to be tools created to increase efficiency, but obviously a carpenter is going to use a power tool. He's not going to use a hand tool to make a house, but he's still him.
Yeah.
And I think as long as you're able to draw that line in the sand of where your tools are kind of taking over for you, and it's not really you doing it anymore, it's not really art anymore, So that's how I look at it. It's
interesting. The AI definitely, I didn't think that the artists were going to be the first ones that it came for.
I think that a lot of it is like, what it is it gives a lot of people that are not artists to create something and receive validation for. And the platforms that are out there, Facebook, Instagram, like their whole business module is based on the addiction of validation, right? So that's the trap right there. And that's what I said previously. It's like, it's so important as an artist to not get sucked into that, and maintain your own course,
It's something I talked a lot with our friend Dave Barnes ages ago, but the warmth of human error. And if I use that as a crutch. If someone catches a mistake in the magazine, I'm like, well, that's just, we like that because that it wasn't a robot that made that.
Mistakes and flaws are inherently what we're attracted to, both in every aspect of being a human. I think, the standard hero's journey script is all about failure, rise from failure, how to become a better version of yourself, how to share that version of yourself. Like almost every major movie in some way, shape, or form is based on that storyline concept, because that's ultimately what we want to achieve in life,
The monomyth.
Yeah.
What frustrates you the most these days?
The feeling like I never have enough time, but like I said, I'm always working on more time management, or trying to be better, more efficient. That, and I think for the most part, I'm pretty happy how things are going. I feel like things are becoming very exponential. I'm like learning and gaining more at a rapid rate, and I think that's one of the best things about photography or art, or a lot of the careers that seem like you're going absolutely nowhere for a really long time, and then all of a sudden really start to pick up and keep going. That's what I always say to everybody. That's like, I think that the turtle wins the race kind of deal. And if you stick with it, it just gets better and better and better.
On that note of time, what do you do to decompress, or what does your downtime look like? Do you read a book? Do you go lay in the sun? Do you do yoga?
Like I still love the mountains, and I still love doing all the activities here. I spend most of my time doing the activities just for fun with my friends now, whereas
no
like,
camera bag.
For a very long time, it was, there was no way I would be out on a sunny powder day without my camera, whereas now, I feel like I've come full circle. It's like a reward.
Yeah.
But I'm still very greatly inspired by being out there, and it's still incorporated into my look of things. Even my commercial work, like it still has the look of some guy that came from a place called Whistler and spent a bunch of years scampering around the mountains taking ski photos in the photos that I do now.
Do you find you're getting hired to photograph moving objects more than still stuff like cars, boats?
I think that there's always a strong action component, or even action in terms of a sense of energy. Doesn't necessarily have to be a moving
Right. It could be
object,
dance.
or just the energy of a people or a location. I think that what people want to see is that you understand this environment, you understand this people, you understand the genre, you're somewhat of an expert in it, and trust. Like in the commercial world, like I think trust is the most important thing. You're being hired ultimately to do something that you can do in your sleep with one hand tied behind your back. Like that's the level of trust that they want in the person that they want to hire. They're not going to hire you to break the mold and try something super experimental with their money on the line. So I think that that's an important part. And that also becomes an important dynamic of why personal work is so important, because that's where you can really go for it. You can really hang it out there. You can totally blow it, crash the ship, whatever. Like you can totally go from a heavily risk managed situation to a situation where you can really go off the deep end if you want to.
What's your greatest extravagance or your guilty pleasure these days?
That's a tough one. I mean, I think that I've grown to love hanging out with my daughter the most. I think that I don't know if that'd be classified as a guilty pleasure, but if I just think about where if the number one choice to spend my time, that would be it.
Yeah. Are you scared of anything weird? Spiders, snakes, tall ladders?
Yeah, I have a pretty substantial phobia of the underwater. There's a term for it, like a fear of not only underwater, but like objects underwater. Like I like going scuba diving, a shipwreck is like the scariest thing for me. And I was like, until I like saw someone talk about it, I was like, oh my God, that's been me. Because I have nightmares about like swimming around under the ocean and being in a shipwreck or just some weird like there's literally like a fear, I forget what it's called, but it's fear of man-made objects underwater.
Wow. Well, it's have you ever done anything like that? Like weird?
No way.
There's no way you'll do it.
But I think that, like, because it comes like a lot of, I said, I think you got to like overcome the fears. So I think someday I'm going to have to instill on a personal project of going scuba diving some old shipwrecks or something.
What do you most value in your friends?
I think the value in your friends is that they understand you and that they always got your back and that they believe in you. Your true friends are the people that just understand you, and you can call on them for help because they do understand you,
Yeah.
And, so maintaining relationships over a long period of time is very important, I think. And I'm really lucky that a lot of my really close friends to this day are the people that I met when I first moved to Whistler, and we've been on this journey the whole time.
It's nice how many of those old day crew has been able to stay in the area.
Yeah. I mean, it's I feel like we're kind of the last of a generation like that, because Whistler's really breaking apart. It hasn't really done a very good job at allowing the youth culture to really remain and thrive, which is unfortunate. It's kind of just quickly becoming like Aspen or something like that, where it's very challenging for youth culture to live there and thrive there. So.
And I feel like the challenge is, it's not just a single out one mountain town. It's a spectrum, and if it's already happened in Aspen and it's happening in Whistler now, then it's going to be happening somewhere else at some point until somebody figures it out. But I agree, and I think about the old days when somebody would have an art show and somebody would have a fashion show, and then there would be a film festival, and then there'd be a slideshow, and that do the kids seem to have that anymore? Where it's from the community, there's no banners. I don't think they do, and I think part of it is because it's really expensive to do anything. And I think the other part of it is, the kids have to work so many jobs. If you're working 3 jobs, you don't have time to put a canvas in the corner of your room and spend 200 hours painting like Chili Tom did, or, to organize a fashion show like Shirai used to do, that where she would go to the thrift store, get all the clothes, make a fashion show, sell the outfits, donate the money to the women's center. Like, all that stuff takes time. And I feel like, and again, I'm out of touch with the mountain culture towns because I'm an adult, but I don't think the kids have that kind of time, or they're just here for 1 year and they know they're here for 1 year, so they don't invest the time into the community.
Yeah, I mean, it takes the more sort of veteran people in the youth culture to be driving the ship for those younger people, to give them those venues, those vices, those relationships of like, oh, I want to help you do that. You know, like you don't just come right out of the gates in your first year in Whistler and create stuff that somebody like Chili Tom did. That takes a while to build that kind of that energy and following, and I think it's just very challenging for anybody to just get to that point now. I think there's no shortage of people that are there to be in that infancy, but to go for the long haul where you're going to be at a position to give back to the community and create that following, I think it's super hard now.
It seems tricky.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing, speaking of the youth, what do you say to the next generation of kids out there that want to find a way to make a life in the arts, or find a way to, become an outdoor adventure photographer for a job, or just sort of follow the path of you and the people that we know?
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest advice is to not be discouraged by failure, to not be discouraged by what other people think, to go for it, and be really empowered by the energy you put into it, because that's what will create your work ethic. That you have to create your own hunger of like, because for a lot of people, they ask me a single question, well, how to do this, and I'm like, sure, stop recreating, stop partying, and put more effort in, and all of a sudden time will be on your side. But it's not going to get handed to you. The only way to make it happen is to make it happen yourself, and you got to figure out a way to enjoy it with like a massive hunger. And that's how you make it happen. It's actually pretty simple.
Perfect. There we go. Thanks, Blake.
Thank you.
Okay, right? I hope you enjoyed that, Mountain Lifers, because I sure did. And the cool thing is, I bet we could record another hour or more with Blake next month, and it would be just as interesting, maybe even better. Case in point, building off the last thing Blake said there, his Instagram post for today was a Thomas J. Watson quote: "The way to succeed is to double your failure rate." And that's what I'm talking about. The dude has all kinds of good stuff to say, and I really, truly do hope we get him back soon enough. But in the meantime, thanks, Blake, for your time, and thank you to you all for listening. We're up over 50 episodes of Live It Up with Mountain Life now, and if anyone has any feedback or guest suggestions, please hit me up direct at feetbanks@mountainlifemedia.ca. Mostly the only emails I get are people complaining that the typeface is too small in our magazines. So basically, anything you write will be more fun than that. I'm not sure what Colin has coming down the pipe for the pod in the next 2 weeks, but I hope you tune in. And don't forget about mountainlifemedia.ca, which has a bunch of good stuff, including my recent walkie-talkie gear review that I basically hung on old G.I. Joe nostalgia from the 1980s. Speaking of gear, be sure to hit up the Mountain Life store if you feel the urge to adorn yourself with some hats or shirts or mugs or posters. It always warms my heart to see someone out there in the wild repping the mountain life. And speaking of representing, thanks as always to Shirai Rules and Adrian Gendro for the voice work and music off the top. Those two have been down since day one, and we really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you who have been down that long as well. So stay cool, mountain lifers. Summer is winding down, but if you can, don't rush it. Take her easy, take her slow, and please, pretty please, with a cherry on top, leave the campsite better than you found it.